Alrighty, Zach Burley back here with episode 2 of my playthrough of Empire of the Sun. We are on the January through April game turn of 1943, so we're switching now into year 3, technically, of the war, the second full year, and I want to thank everyone who tuned into my first episode, especially to Mark Herman, who designed this game. His name's on the board, gave me some good feedback on the video, and as well as a rules error, which I did make in the first video. Since I'm playing solo, normally you would not be able to declare an attack, roll the dice, then look through your hand and play a reaction card late. You have to play reaction cards before you do any of that. So I only did that because I was unopposed in this one, because I'm playing solo and it's hard to manage 2 hands of cards. So if you're watching this as a rules instructional, you're not allowed to do that. You have to play the card before any of the dice are rolled. So that, not necessarily a mistake, but just something I was doing because I'm playing solo. The rules mistake I did make on that card is when I did ambush, I only added the +4 modifier. I didn't roll the allied die first and then subtract the losses and then roll the Japanese dice. I didn't do that. I should have on an ambush, so there's some rules mistakes that he pointed out. I want to thank him for designing such a great game, as well for watching, and thank all of you. I'm hoping to start up a Paths of Glory playthrough pretty soon, so hopefully that'll be up by the time you're watching this. Alright, now onto this game. And I went ahead and did the reinforcements and everything for the turn. Not really going to go through that too much. You'll see them as they pop up. But the hands for this turn are incredible for both sides. I looked at the Japanese first, and I was like, oh wow, this is a great hand. And then I looked at the Americans, the Allied hand, and I was like, wow, this is a great hand. So at least it is to me. I think it is. We'll have to see in practice. So we have Operation Toenails, the New Georgia invasion, which is going to be good. Prime Minister Curtin, which gets us some ground replacements. That's nice. The Burma offensive, so that gives us a card for the CBI if needed. Operation Vengeance, very interesting. Can change up a combined fleet, which is a real pain for the Japanese. Halsey, the replacement card there, that's going to improve the South Pacific HQ, which is good. Oboe, which is another good invasion card, and then the Macon Island raid, which another resource card. So 3 resource cards in this one, which is interesting. But personally, I think that this could be a really interesting hand for the Allies. Just to kind of be a pain, and increase their own operational abilities as well. It gives them some flexibility as far as probably used in the Pacific and this in the CBI. So I think that could be a really interesting hand. They're going to be going first, but let's go ahead and show you the Japanese hand, just so you can get an idea of what's going on here. So they've got the bridge on the River Kwai, which is crucial, of course, especially since they're doing so much in the CBI now. They have Western Force, and they still have not taken over the Dutch East Indies, so this is going to help out with that. Operation MO, which could be good for a naval battle, which may happen at some point because this 2-pronged naval has split up the U.S. Navy, so we'll see if they're able to do that. Jungle warfare for this one, that's going to be really good for, well, I think actually maybe, okay, no, it still works as a surprise attack, so this could be really good for the CBI. A weather card, so that's useful to have up your sleeve. An intercept, and then the barge, which is actually, I'm really looking forward to having this as the Japanese. So honestly, I mean, you're talking heavy on military events. You got 4 of them in there. You got this political card that's crucial, and then these 2 reaction cards. So for me, this is going to be a lovely game. And thus far, it's been the best game I've played. And I'm like, actually, I wish I would have gotten some of it before, but I'm glad to have gotten what I did get. And so I'm really happy to bring this to you guys. So I'm going to play through these hands. Like I said, I've done in the past. I may not bring you every turn, every card play, but I'll bring to you what is interesting and show you what I can get. Alright, so we're a few action cards in. I'll bring you what's happened up to this point. The Japanese used Western Force, I believe, to grab in Sumatra, did a assault into Palembang, grabbed, what's this over here, Mindanao, or Minadao, apologize. They also played barges and managed to get the U.S. Asia destroyer out of Batavia, so it's just a matter of time. before the Dutch East Indies falls here. The U.S. actually, as I'm about to show you, planned a big invasion, the same one you're about to see here in the Solomons, on this invasion of Rabaul, this attack on Rabaul. But the Japanese played Halsey's Typhoon and ended that. So it's that disappointment of setting all the units up, being excited for this attack, and then having to put all the pieces back. But interestingly enough, throughout this whole time I've been doing, there's been a lot of surprise attacks. The attack on Batavia was a surprise attack. The Western Force, I believe... Oh, no, it wasn't. So we've already had a surprise attack in this one so far. This one's going to be a surprise attack as well, which is only going to help. On the first turn, they moved the Australians in because they had oboe, so they wanted to utilize that to activate the Australian ground unit. So they have them in there. They landed them on the ground, so they don't have to worry about the amphibious assault aspect of the die roll. So what's the attack look like? It's only 2 battle hexes because the logistics value is a little bit lower than oboe. They were going to pin the unit in a WEWAC with oboe, but they have only 4 this time, plus the 2 is 6. So a pinning attack on truck, as they've done every time they've done anything in the Solomons. They've got the North Carolina and the Massachusetts, actually, involved, as well as WASP, and the 11th Air Force and the 2nd Australian Corps will be launching this attack. And it'll be the 6th Air Force, 6th Air Division, 23rd Air Flotilla, 24th Air Flotilla, defending alongside the 33rd Japanese Army, with the kamikaze Ayoba Ahai. So we'll get to the naval combat, air naval first, and this is going to be a surprise attack, which is not the same as an ambush, I don't think. It's not, because it's listed separately. So the surprise attack, as far as I know, it just means that they can't react. The enemy cannot react, and the attackers get a die roll modifier, but it's not like ambush where the defenders, I don't think you get to roll, inflict hits, and then the opponents roll. Like, I don't think they get a roll first, but let me just check up on that, because I could be wrong. I got that rule wrong earlier. So let's go into the initiative segment, which is 4. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think, as far as what I can tell, that you do it regularly. You just get no reaction, and you get the modifier as the attacker. So we're going to roll up for the air-naval combat now. It's going to be, let's calculate these numbers up, because I did them earlier, but that was before I played Toenails. I calculated it out with oboe. So we're going to have the North Carolina and the Massachusetts plus WASP plus the 11th Air Force. So it's going to be 53. I should probably do the pinning attack first. Let's just calculate this up. 8 and 7 and 9 and 10 and 8 and 4. So it's going to be 46 and 53. Before we do that, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. This pinning attack up here in truck. So the Allies roll a 7, the Japanese a 4, which means that for the Allies it'll be enough. I mean, for the Japanese, enough to do the 2 hits necessary to get rid of the Air Force unit, or it'll be halved. So let's see here, 14 and 10 and 12 and 3. 14 and 12 and 10 and 3. 39. So you divide that by 2, it's 19. So not quite, you round up? Yeah, so it is just enough actually. So just enough to get rid of the American Air unit up here in truck. And they do 7 themselves, which is just a 1, not enough to do anything. So the pinning attack does its job, despite the fact that the air unit has to pay for it. And so now it'll be 53 against, actually the Japanese are going to add in this. No, they can't because it's a surprise. Never mind. So it's going to be 53 against 46 here. So let's roll up for this air naval. Not good at all. Not good at all. From an Allied perspective. So it's going to be 0 for the Allies, which will get put up to a 3. And then an additional +1 because they had the aircraft and it's 1943, so +4. So it'll actually be a half result on that 53. Which is, let's go back here, 27, which isn't terrible. And then it's a 7 for the Japanese, which is not modified at all, which is just a 1. So it's going to be 27 and 46. So I don't even, the ground combat will still go on because it's not a amphibious assault. I could be wrong on that. Correct me if I am. So it's going to be 27 here. So that'll be 10. You'll have to do this one, which is 8. So you have to reduce everything first. 18 from 27 is only going to leave you with 9, which isn't enough to do another hit. It's really unfortunate. And they'll do 46, which is going to be 12 on Wasp. And then 16 on the North Carolina. And then they'll hit the Mississippi as well. And that will be all that they can do. So a step loss for each. So the Allies will lose the air naval, I believe, because they took 3 step losses to just 2 step losses of the Japanese. And now this is something that's never happened before, where it's actually a ground assault. I guess that the Navy's no longer for the Americans and the air units no longer apply. I could be wrong on that, but if they lose the air naval, should they not have to retreat? Let's see, determining the winner of air naval. Reaction. If the reaction is the winner, offensive ground units that entered the hex do not take part in the ground battle. Amphibious assaults do not capture the hex in this case. If the hex contains offensive ground units entered by ground, not amphibious assault, then immediately conduct a ground battle if there are no, otherwise there is no ground battle. So as far as I can tell, I don't know that necessarily means they have to retreat. So yeah, I would love for someone to explain that to me. I think as far as I can tell, they don't have to retreat. They stay in the hex for the battle. They just lost it, and I guess that only applies for amphibious assault, and this is not an amphibious assault. So these stay here, and the only reason I'm saying that is because of the modifiers on the chart. I'm not exactly sure how that affects these, because they, for this one, they will not be, this will not apply, and this will not apply. So I guess it doesn't really matter whether or not they retreat, but just either tell me it doesn't matter or it does, whatever the case may be. So we're going to continue on with the ground battle here. It's going to be 9 versus 12. Drop the Japanese dice again. It's going to be another pretty dull result of a 1 and a 4. So for the Allies, they'll get a +1, which will put them to 2. But they'll have to subtract 2 for being in a mixed hex, so they're back down to 0, which is not great. And then, so it's a half, which won't be enough to do anything. For the Japanese, they're going to have 4, which is a 1, and the 9 is not enough to do anything. So it's pretty much just a stalemate. The ground combat does not result in anything. The air naval does result in some U.S. losses, which could actually end up being pretty bad because now, yes, the Japanese are weakened here. They did take some step losses, but now the U.S. is significantly weaker here. So if the Japanese can combine these forces into a counterattack now on Guadalcanal, perhaps, they might be able to knock them out of the Solomons with this. Either way, they've slowed down the advance, if nothing else, because they dealt more than they received. They'll just have to pin the U.S. up in Kwajalein, but they could very well end up counterattacking. So a failure as far as this goes. I really thought this was going to go better than it did, but it's hindsight is 20/20. So we'll move on to the Japanese turn and see what they go with. Alrighty, so the Japanese will be responding immediately on their next card play with a counterattack, and it's actually perfect that this card would end up in their hand. It's Operation MO, the Battle of the Coral Sea, which gives the Japanese the ability to add, for the fortuitous rain squalls, an extra 2 to the defense strike of their carrier units, which is going to work out perfectly for this attack here, which is going to go in 3 bits, 3 battle hexes. The counterattack on Guadalcanal, a pinning attack in Leh, and a pinning attack in Kwajalein. So let's go ahead and get these pinning attacks out of the way. It's going to be first, this attack on Kwajalein is going to be 5 factors against 4. It's going to be 24. 24 and 4 is 28. And 28 and 16 will be 44. So it's going to be 44 against 5. Bleak. And the numbers even more bleak. The 1 isn't even going to do anything. And the 8 will give a 1 result, which is enough to eliminate the 24th Air Flotilla. Obviously not ideal for the Japanese, but I figure it's worth it for this one to keep the air carrier fleet for the U.S. out of this battle. We can do this other pinning attack on Leh. It's going to be 5 against 20, which is certainly more reasonable and a just as bad die roll. It's actually worse. It's going to be a 9 and a 0, and that will be enough to not eliminate, because this unit can come back, the 27th Air Flotilla with no hits done themselves. And that brings us to the main event. Hopefully we've gotten all the battle rolls out for the Japanese, because they certainly have gotten some really bad ones here. So it's going to be the 23rd Air Flotilla, the Shikaku, the Soryu, and the Akagi, as well as Hai, against the Mississippi, the North Carolina, and Wasp. And they do get some activations, and they're going to bring in the 2nd Marine Air Wing, because that's really the only other options that they have to bring in anybody of use in this battle. There could be some others they could bring in from Port Moresby, now that I look at it. But they're going to go with this, and the final totals here, let me get them to you. 31, so 53-31 is what it's going to be. Let's get these rolls in here. Not great again, so just a theme of very bad results. A 4 and a 9 is what they got. So at least the Japanese have a added bonus. So a 4 result will be a half. 53, once again, half of that is the 27 they did earlier, which should be enough to destroy the ships, but they're going to have to remove that they have to reduce that air wing first, and then the Americans will get a 1 result on that 31, but they're able to destroy reduced units, which is good for them at least. So it's going to be, we'll go ahead and do the Japanese. So they're going to get 27. So they can do 16, to get rid of the North Carolina, along with the, well, with 27 actually, they're not going to have enough to do 2. So they could do, they'll have to reduce this, which is 10. And this one will be 22. So they get rid of they'll reduce this and get rid of this one. So Wasp will be gone for now. So that's 2 step losses. And they will receive 31 themselves. And let's see, I had 2 to each of these, so they'll have to reduce these first. Oh, well, it's a critical hit, so they could get rid of the other ones, but I think this is the one they really want to go with. So that's 14, and see, they could basically do 2. They could reduce 2 of these at 14 each. So they'll reduce the Shokaku and the Akagi. So that's 2 step losses either way. And in the end, a not quite as successful counterattack as the Japanese will have hoped for. Throwing in the carrier fleet, and then it gets snubbed by a list of bad results. I mean, anything worse from the Americans, and it's definitely a different story. As it goes now, they're basically just taking some step losses they didn't need to take. And now, just as much as the first attack here swung the balance, this counterattack failing could have just swung it back the other direction. So how will the Americans capitalize? Alright, here's the very next American play. It's going to be Halsey replaces Gormley. And the previous Halsey HQ, or the Gormley HQ, was in Darwin here in the north, so they've replaced that now with the Halsey HQ, and they're going to be launching the second attack against Rabaul. And this really goes back, the last couple of battles have had really big implications on this offensive. I mean, in hindsight, the Japanese really should not have launched that counterattack. They've taken a position of strength that they had earlier and then turned it into a position of weakness now. So that really was a boneheaded move on my part. But now they are going to be attacking the Americans, still using that Australian ground unit, and have 34 air factors using 4 air units. It's going to be the 5th Air Force, the 11th Air Force, the 13th Air Force, and the also the 13th Air Force. But this is a long-range bomber, not a long-range bomber, but a bomber rather than a fighter. And the Japanese, this is 34, and this is going to be 33 in defense. And there is a chance for reaction, which is what I was speaking of, and they have opportunity to bring in a few, and the Japanese don't really want to, because if they bring in the ships from up there, everything's already reduced. So you're saying they can go ahead and hit those carriers, and it's too risky at this point. So my one flash of aggressive nature, I'm a very defensive player, so the one flash of aggressiveness has really ruined the ability to respond here. So they're going to leave it 34, 33. Figure those are pretty good odds. And so we'll go ahead and do the air naval rolls here. And a terrible result for the Japanese again. This is like the 4th in a row for them. I have to stop rolling down here. I usually roll on the board. I've been rolling down here. I'm going to have to stop doing that. So it's a 7 to a 0. So the 0 is going to be just the quarter, and a quarter of the 33 that they had is going to be 9. Which, from a quick glance, that's not going to do anything. And then the 7 will be a 1 result, which is going to do 34. So everything's reduced at this point. I'll go ahead and take out this battleship. Best thing to do. So that is 10. And then this air flotilla, that's 20. So leaves them with 14. And the last will be the Ayoba. And remove that one. So that leaves there with 2. So it was 3 step losses to 0. So the air battle clearly for the way of the Allies. So now we can go onto the ground. And so still, as far as I understand, they will not have these pluses because they are not the only ones with this. And they are not the only ones with this because there's 1 of each. So maybe I could have done that a bit more strategically to receive a bonus here, because they're going to get -2. But I think I'm doing this right, that they don't have to retreat, that they stay in the hex for this attack, that they don't have to pull away in the middle of it, but I could be wrong there. So we continue with the ground attack now. It'll be 12 against 9. And now the rolls go the way of the Japanese for whatever reason. Now they've switched over, and so it'll be a 2 for the Americans, which is just going to get a -2 because they have none of the bonuses, so it's a half. So half of that's going to do nothing, and it's a 2, 18 for the Japanese, which is going to be enough to flip the Australian Second Corps. So the air naval battle does not go their way, but the ground battle does. They are going to hang on to Rabaul. The Japanese hold on to Rabaul, and now those forces are really thin. I don't think that they can survive another attack. Alright, the next Japanese play will be a central force, conquest of Borneo. It hopes to switch up this point of attack and finish off the DEI. And so it's going to be these two, the 4th Air Division and the 6th or the 5th Air Division against the Dutch air units and naval units. So it's going to be 32 against 9. So not great, 2 and 3, but should not be too much in their favor at least. So it's going to be the 3 for it's going to be a half. So of the 9, it's not going to be enough to do anything for the Allies, for the Dutch, and it'll be a quarter result of 32, which is just 8. So it'll be enough to knock out, just barely, this Dutch ship. And so they do take a step loss, so they will remain, and they will win the air naval, and so then it'll be these 2. That's 18 against the 6th of this Dutch division here. And so we'll move everything out of the way here. Another very poor result. A 1 and a 2. And so it'll be no modifiers for the attackers as far as I can tell. Then again, if I'm getting this wrong, I really am getting a good bit of these attacks wrong. But there should be nothing for that. And they are an ISR still, the Japanese, which is why they don't have any naval units in the area. Otherwise, they definitely would have brought some down. And so it'll be the half result for them on the 18, which is just going to not be enough. And then a half result as well, which is not going to be enough. So it's another stalemate for the Japanese. Whittle down the forces, but not enough to take the space. And as much as this turn had going for it, as far as the promise that I thought it was going to have, the actual cards were really good. The hands were dealt out, and since then it's been not the showiest of hands. In fact, not much territory really has exchanged. So we'll see as this turn winds down what the Allies have. Subsequent Allied card play is going to be Vinegar Joe Stilwell with a Burma offensive. And so the way this is going to pan out is they're going to launch a pinning attack on Rangoon to keep the air out of that. They're going to have SEAC support a ground attack, which just currently has this 1, the 3rd Air Division, against attack on Mandalay, which is occupied by the 15th and 38th Japanese armies. And then they'll have the 15th Corps, the 33rd Corps, and the 2nd Indian Corps. Will be the attacking units here into Mandalay, and they'll get that +2 for the attack, which will be nice. So let's go ahead and do this pinning attack first, which is going to be 32 against 5. Not great. And I have to roll for a reaction first, which if there's not really anything that the Japanese can do. It's going to be 2, so they're good. They can't bring in anything because it's just they're an ISR and there's nothing in range, but it just prevents there being a surprise attack. Let's go ahead and do this pinning battle first. It's going to be a 7 and a 2 for the Japanese, the advantage there. So it's going to be 5 against 32, and that 7, the 7 for the Japanese is going to be enough to eliminate the American volunteer group, unfortunately, and the 2 will not be enough to do anything. But we can now go on to the air combat here over Mandalay. It's going to be 10 versus 20, and another bad result. And it really just is a defender's turn this time. The defenders have won pretty much everything. It's going to be an 8 and a 2 now for this one. It's going to be a 1 result for the Japanese doing 20, which is terrible because that's 10, 20 on CX. So this unit will be destroyed for now. And they'll do 2, which is a quarter result, which is not enough to do anything to the Japanese. So that's certainly not good. They're definitely not going to have any modifiers. I did not mess up this rule for sure because there is nothing remaining for the reaction play. But the ground combat will carry on. So the ground rolls are still, this is going to be bloody here. This is certainly not a light affair here. 9 and a 6 the roll is, and it'll be a +2 for the ground combat because of the Stillwell card. So it's going to be for the allies, it's a 6, -1 for being a jungle hex, which down to 5, put it back up to 2, which will put it into the 7, which is a 1.5 range. They're not going to get the other 2 for the naval units or the active air units, so it's just going to be a straight 7, which is a 1.5, and that's going to be a 48. So 1.5 of 48 is going to be 72. Which is just absolutely ridiculous amount of hits there. I'm pretty sure that math is right. That's 28 and then 48. Yeah, so 72 hits against the Japanese, which is 12, 24, 36. Enough to eliminate these Japanese armies. Absolutely, no doubt about it. And so 9 will be 2 for them, which they were at 18 and 10, which is going to be 28, and 2 of 28 is going to be 56, which is still quite a bit. It's going to be 12, 24, 36, 36 from, and they had 56. It's going to leave them with 20 more, and they'll go ahead and get rid of this Indian Corps because it's a pre-war unit and is eliminated. So they take 3 step losses, and the attackers actually take 4. Now let me take a look in the rules because the attackers took more step losses, but since if the offensive player is the only one with surviving ground units, they win. So even though they took more step losses, they did enough damage to retake Mandalay, and that will force an emergency move down to Rangoon, and that is a huge step in the right direction because they were massing in this area, the Japanese. It had brought even more troops into Rangoon, so definitely needed to be stopped there despite the fact that it comes at a heavy cost, and that will move up the progress of war track by 1, which, to be honest, at this point I had forgotten. So they are going to take a victory point loss on this turn, just a complete mistake on my part. So once again, just goes to show that not an expert at this game as of yet. Just completely slipped my mind on turn 4, something I hadn't done yet, and so they're going to take it. They're going to take that victory point loss at the end of the turn. But that'll wrap up for the Allies. They have Operation Vengeance, which will come out for them on their last turn. But let's see if the Japanese decide to respond in the CBI. Alrighty, so we've played out the remainder of the cards. Nothing else really happened. the Americans played Operation Vengeance and changed the Combined Fleet HQ, and the Japanese played in this Jungle Warfare card into the Future Operations card. They were going to launch an attack in the CBI with that because it's very useful. We're going to try and strike back, but they're going to wait, get some forces in there, really ramp it up, and then go in with that attack. What they were able to do, though, at the very end was take in this city here, whose name is one of the only ones that I have a really hard time pronouncing, Tajilajap. Tajilajap, we're going to go with it, which means that the Dutch East Indies surrender. This unit has to come off. But that reduces the victory points by 1, and then another one comes off because of the failure to reach the progressive war, which means they're sitting at 5 at the moment, which is certainly not ideal. So, of course, they're going to have to hit that progressive war next turn. I'm not sure about Burma yet, whether or not the Japanese will actually be able to take that. China is still not even started on. New Guinea is going to be an uphill climb for the Japanese as well, so it's going to be a matter of whether or not they can keep pulling that down. Otherwise, it's going to be a slug out to the end. But that concludes the first turn of 1943, and I'll deal out the cards for next one and get back to you with the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.